America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and I come to you live about this time to talk about the news of the day. Now, I had a pretty good time doing the chess and critical race theory video. So I'm going to just do a chess and philosophy video in general, because I thought of some more, I think, important kind of ways to explain what I do in philosophy and what it's important and why philosophy is important in general. So that's going to be today's show. If you know a little bit of chess, it'll go down easier. If you don't know a little bit of chess, it'll still be funny because I'm pretty funny. And why don't I just start going, right? So if I just say you, excuse me, you person, here is a knight. You know how knights move. You know what a knight is. You know how they move. And so you know where this knight could go. Right? A lot of people in the audience would say, like, yeah, I know enough about chess. I know what a knight is. I know where knights can go. I know the facts about knights, the relevant properties of knights, and how they can move under the rules of the game. And then I say, like, okay, well, then you know what this knight is. You know where it can go. And I say, well, does anything change when I blow up the board and this is the case, right? Same night. Haven't moved anything. I've just kind of blown up the board and given you a little bit more perspective, right? So now take a look at the board for a second. You'll see that that knight is in a different position, right? It can't move the way you were taught knights can move. One, it can't move on the bottom because those two black pawns are there. And, you know, the business of moving anywhere else is a little bit dangerous because the queen could eat it just about in all the other places. And the places that the queen can't eat it, the white rook can eat it. So there's one kind of safe place insofar as you lose the knight, but you take the rook if you move it, closer to the, to the diagonal of the black pawn. So what you thought about where knights can move was a little bit abstract. It was a little bit formal, and it wasn't actually adequate to the properties of that knight. In order to know where that knight can move as a knight, you needed you needed a more robust picture of the game at play. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to explain why all of this is really important and how we assign properties, because it turns out that the properties we have aren't just about us in isolation. They're about our relationships and the content of the object of our relationships. And getting your mind around that in a serious way is very important for your life and to try to rescue meaning for it. And I'll explain for your life. So I'll explain all of that after the opening.
To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and it can feature in your front. To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and it can feature in your front. To the beat, y'all.
All right, so once again, because I know it takes a little bit of while for people to come in to the live show, you can say that you know how knights move in the abstract. Let me get you that picture of the knight. There you go. You could say that you know, if I show you this, if I show my 6-year-old how this moves, or the 8-year-old how to move, she'll be able to show me in the abstract how it moves, right? But that's not exactly how this knight can move, because how this knight can move is going to be constrained by its context. Right? How this knight can move is going to be constrained by its context. So the way this knight moves is like, colorblind policy. I can go anywhere. I want, as long as I do it in like a Y formation or an L, depending on how you learned. I can go to the top right square if I want. I can go to the other square if I want. And the world is my oyster. I can go anywhere I want. And then you realize that it turns out being a black knight isn't the fairy tale that you were told. It turns out that this is the board you're looking at. And you're like, well, it seems your options are markedly constrained. But you haven't changed. You're still a black knight. Right? So what has changed? Well, it turns out that your properties are not merely a matter of you. They are a matter of the relationships you are in with other people, including that white queen and the white rook, and even the black pawns who are taking up your spots because you can't really even retreat because, the black pawns are there. So, your relationship to even this white pawn is compromised because if you move there, then, the white pawn will kill you. So it turns out that the properties you have as a knight, are actually not just a matter of something internal to you. They're also tied to your external relationships. This is why it's also important that to understand money, money only makes sense in terms of other money. Like, you can't talk about what $10 or $100 or $1 million is in a vacuum because it only makes sense in terms of other money. And what it can buy is going to be in terms of money. $1 million in Los Angeles, in terms of real estate, is markedly different than $1 million in Georgia. Like, it's just $500,000, even $400,000 to buy a house in Los Angeles. You're not going to get a lot of house in that. But that's because it's in relationship to other money. And in relationship, it's not, right? So you can say, well, I'm the master of my destiny. I control who I am. I control all of my properties. Well, if that were true, hold on, let me get the diagrams right. If you were the master of your destiny, you control all of your properties, there would be no real difference between this position you're in. All right, so you're a knight in this position. Doesn't look good. You can say, well, I have my properties as the knight. Whatever white is in, that's what they do. All right? That's not about me. It's just what they do. Then you're saying that there's no real difference between that knight and this knight. All right? So what does it mean to say that there's no real difference between this knight and this knight? The truth is there is a difference. There is a difference. This knight has a lot more viable options than this knight. The thing is, what you need to understand is there wasn't any change in the properties of the knight. There wasn't even any change in the properties of the black team. So what the knight could do was determined by the content of the object of its relationship. Insofar as a queen was a queen, the knight was hugely circumscribed. But insofar as the queen is a pawn, the knight isn't circumscribed, right? So the content of the player in that square, whether it's talking about a queen or you're talking about a pawn, markedly changes the properties of the knight. So I've changed the properties of the knight without actually, changing the internal capacities of the knight. I've changed it by changing its relationships. Right? And that's what you need to take seriously. Your properties are determined to a certain extent by your relationships. For example, like I said before, Mackenzie Scott as a person in a vacuum doesn't really mean much to me if I'm sitting in a room with her. Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, the billionaire because of the divorce, completely different scenario. She can cough and give me $1 million and allow me to do this whole thing like with a marketing budget, right? So the content of her ex-husband's bank account can change me, changes what this means to be at a dinner with Mackenzie Scott, right? So if you don't understand how the content of the objects of your relations change like your own properties, you don't understand why this night is changed by the difference between the queen in that spot and the pawn in that spot. Because you're just looking at the knight. Because you're just like, well, I just got to look at me. Can't worry about anybody else. And if you're just looking at the knight, you don't actually understand how the game is worked. And you just have an abstract understanding of the knight. If like you're focused here, you don't actually know all of the properties of the knight. So where do we get this confused? Excuse me, I got a cough. It's going on. It's going down, and you got to give me a few more days. All right, so I get the allergies and all that stuff this time of year. So where do we get this notion that these entities are self-subsisting and they don't you don't need to talk about their relationships in order to understand what they are? I mean it's bad metaphysics, but it's also a lot of it's the work of philosophy to actually peel back these kinds of biases that we've inherited. And there are liberal biases. Liberal biases will tell you that, like, well, you get what you work for and you get what you earn. And liberal biases will tell you that, like, well, everyone gets you get the job you need and you get the income you need. Or you get what you deserve, without actually talking about, like, inheritance. Without actually talking about marrying into money, without actually talking about marrying into someone else's inheritance, without actually talking about like getting the hookup job, right? So if you have, and this is hard to convey to my students, how much money is transferred through inheritance and how much money, like you could screw up all of your life for like 30 years and then marry well. And like, you could screw up excuse me. You can screw up your life for 30 years and then marry not well. And then it turns out that person you married not well has like, the stoner slack or whatever has like a grandparent who died. And now like you're wealthy or whatever, or I don't know. So like, we're not honest about the way money moves through relationships. And how the money that moves through relationships becomes a property of the people in relationships, not just a property of the individual. Because relationships confer properties. And if you don't think that relationships confer properties, then you don't really know the difference between this situation and this situation. Right? You don't know the difference between, you're a black guy working $10 an hour at a job, as I was for a very long time. But the white guy working $10 an hour for a job, has a parent who's going to give them a down payment for the house. And you will never, as a black man, you will never get a down payment saving up $10 an hour. But while you're renting, the other guy's going to be building equity in a house because, their parents bought the down payment for the house and kick in for expenses, right? So you have to understand relationships if you're going to understand the properties of anything. You think liberalism will tell you that you can understand properties of individual objects without understanding their relationships to other objects. But you can't understand the properties of individual objects without understanding their relationships to other objects. Right? And so what you think of as how the night moves when I just show you this picture is abstract. Like that picture in your head about like where you go, in an L formation or in a Y formation, depending on how you taught, or to the side, that's an abstract. No night actually moves that way. Every single actual night is a night in context. So your abstract understanding of how nights move is just that, a necessarily underdeveloped conception of what a night is. Because all real nights are not just nights in the abstract that can move all of those different ways. They're always nights within a game that imposes constraints. So the cliches we tell back kids, look, you can do anything you want. You can do that's an abstract understanding of what it means to do anything in America. Because honestly, the world's complicated. In order to do something in America, it helps if your parents have done it. Not just generational wealth, generational knowledge is a thing. I got a guy working on my house right now. He's a carpenter, and you know what his stepdad was? You know what his dad was? A carpenter. And you know what his stepdad was? A carpenter. And that's not, you don't, how do you say, like that kind of generational knowledge is matters. That kind of generational knowledge matters. And if you just ignore the fact that carpenters come from carpenters and dentists come from dentists, and apparently pharmacists come from pharmacists, you'll just, you'll be confused about how everyone makes moves in this very complicated, sophisticated life. Because some trades carpentry may not be one of them, but many trades take more than a generation to get the sensibilities to appreciate, to be, all right? And just not in an obvious way, right? So, I wanted to make sure that you understand that what you are in actuality isn't this abstract figure. What you are in actuality isn't this abstract figure. What you are in actuality is a figure in context. Now, your context is going to change from time to time, but you're always going to be in context. And if you don't understand your own properties as being tied to your context, then you're going to have a hard time wrestling meaning for your life and having your life make sense in a lot of different ways. All right? And if you don't think that context matters, then you're saying that this night is this night, whether that queen is a queen or whether that queen is a pawn. But that's just an abstract and almost ignorant way to view this actual night. Right? So this abstract formalism doesn't draw a distinction between this position and this position, saying a night, tonight. No. But a realist approach sees the difference. Right? So, and with that, I'll go back. I'll since I have the pictures here, I'm going to give the critical race theory spiel again in this video. So critical race theory, formal theory, just a theory that's, I think, unduly abstract, will tell you that this is the game. This is the game you're in. Black, you're not positioned particularly well. But it's beatable if you're playing a bad player. I'm a better than average, but not much better than average chess player. I can beat bad players as black. But if a good player or an average player who's white will probably beat me. if this is the situation I'm just thrown into, I'm born into, I just sit down. But it's if someone gave me someone said, look, I'll give you $2,000 if you win the game. You'll walk in as black. I'll give you $2,000 if you win the game. You give me $150 if you lose the game. I might take that bet. With this scenario, even as black, put my 150 against their 2,000. Now, what about now if we blow it up a little bit, blow up the situation a little bit? Mind you, same situation, just blown up. I have to add I added a pawn here by mistake, but you know what I mean. We blow it up a little bit. Much the same situation. Now someone says, I'll give you $2,000 if you beat me as black, and you only have to pay $150 if you lose. I still don't take it because I'm not throwing away $150. The context has changed the game. Right? So the position, so my abstract knowledge, which wasn't robust, like by having all of the relationships filled in, gave me a distorted notion of the state of the play. Right? I would have taken the bet had I not had the real state of play. But now that I have a blown up version of the game and I actually know and I see all of the pieces and all of the variables at issue, I know that even at $150 to $2,000, it would be a waste of my $150 to play this game. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And so, let me just say that one more time. If someone gives you says, I'll give you $2,000 if you beat white, and you pay me $150 if you lose. To this game, depending on who the other player is, I might take it. That's America. You know, it's not exactly fair. Position's not great, but, you know, I'll bet on myself. Right? But that's only because you don't know where all of the other players are. You're just seeing this snapshot. If they blow up the whole game, you'd know that you'd be foolish. You'd know that you'd be foolish and to even spend $150 trying to win this. And it's not because I changed any of the pieces you saw. It's just because I added all of the other pieces, right? So this is why there's a big push against critical race theory, because critical race theory tells you the truth about all of the other pieces that seem to not be relevant when they give you the snapshot. But it turns out that since relationships actually confer properties across relationships, then like it goes from a game that's just hard to win, but possibly market maybe fair, to don't play this game. Don't spend your money. You need to renegotiate the terms of everything. Like this is not, don't play this game. This is a fool's game. Right? And then on the last video I said about critical race theory, I said you got to watch, who is this? You got to watch this pawn, because this pawn will say, look, man, I know it's not a great game, but I'll hook you up. I will hook you up. You get me to the other side of the board. I'm gonna become a queen. I'm gonna wreck shop. I'll take care of. I'll handle business. I'll get you in it. We're gonna get that money. Trust, believe that. So that's you got to watch this pawn. This pawn says if I make it to the other side, we all make it to the other side. And so you should just sacrifice as many players as you have to make sure I can make it to the other side. Because once I make it to the other side, I get to decide to be any piece I want to. And so like I'm going to hook all of you guys up. So what happens when that other piece gets to the other side? Bam. How did that happen? White queen. We're like, well, I got to the other side and like I didn't want to. I worked hard to get to where I was going to get to, and I don't want to assimilate with the losing team. And it's messy. If you guys would have hustled a little bit harder and made it across the board, you could have done something for yourself. I'm not. Yeah, so I said that's Obama. That's Kamala Harris when she was running for vice president, when she was running for president at the time. Someone asked her about reparations, and she said, "You don't think I'm going to do something just for black people? Am I going to do something just for black people? No. Now, mind you, Kamala Harris got her black card by going to an HBCU, a university for black people, right? And she was in a black sorority. A sorority for black people. So all of these institutions that credentialed her were for black people. And then the idea that now that she's like attained a place of public power, she's not supposed to do anything for black people, especially in terms of like our justice claims. Because make no mistake, don't let people fool you into thinking that black people's problems are just black people's problems. Black people's problems are America's problems, insofar as America like made black people's problems. So this idea that American government gets to make black people's problems as opposed to gets to shunt America's problem on to black people is a problem. So yeah, so I expected, like a lot of people expected, Kamala Harris or Obama to do something for black people because, well, we have a justice claim and we needed someone in a position of power to actually like give voice and authority to our justice claim. But instead, we got talked into believing, well, if they told us if they make it, we all make it. And so we sacrificed whatever it took to make sure that they made it. And then what happened? Well, Obama's got his place with the Hamptons. He's got his Netflix deal. We all get to tell a story about how he made it, and we are broke. And there's this notion, and this is like the black conservatives. They got this really bad. They got this idea that, well, okay, so my team might die, but I'm going to get to be the queen. My team might die. No, that's not how it works. That's never how like black success, like the game isn't about you being the last black pawn who's standing when your king is checkmated. Like that's not the game. If you think that's winning, if this person thinks, well, I got mine, doesn't matter if my king is checkmated. No, you're still like, you've lost, and there's nobody protecting you now. Like you're not on a team. You're alienated and you're just a pawn in the wilderness. So, yeah, if you like anything I do, and you should, because this is actually, I think, pretty good. You should go ahead and kick in $5, $15, or $50 to a month to www.thefunkyacademic.com. Because I put in no small amount of time and thought into trying to make this apprehensible for, just regular people. Little chess diagrams and I want to recap because there are some points I put forth in the beginning of the video that I think are important to recap. If I just put this picture in front of you and tell you that you know how knights move, then you think you really know how this knight can move and where it can go. It turns out that your knowledge of that knight was always very underdeveloped. And it turns out that the knight couldn't go where you thought it could go. Right? So you're just aware, your abstract awareness of how knights move was never actually concrete awareness of how that knight can move. So telling people abstract notions of what people can do is not really helpful unless you know with some sort of concrete awareness of like what that particular kid can do, that particular person. So these cliches are the equivalent of telling kids that they can move anywhere they want to. You can move anywhere in an L formation, just like everybody else. Anywhere in an L formation, you can move. You can move up here. You can move to this spot over here. Hold on. You can move to this spot over here. But it turns out none of that was actually ever viable. And the people who told you that were either ignorant or just didn't understand the real state of play of the game. Because if this is the game, those moves were never actually open to you for a variety of reasons. Or if they were, it was only temporary before you got eaten. Right, which changes, right? So they were never meaningfully there. It was always abstract. And you could say like, well, I know how knights move. I didn't know how that particular knight moves. But all knights are particular. There is no abstract knight. And that's, I think, an important intervention for you to understand. Like, there is no real abstract knight. All knights happen within a game, and within a game have constraints. So you need to get better at playing knights in games. And if you don't know how to play knights in games, then you actually just your abstract knowledge of what knights can do in the abstract isn't really appropriate, right? So you need kind of a living knowledge, what knights do in games. So thank you for your time. I will see you next week. Peace. Oh, yeah, and if you like what you do, you know what to do. If you appreciate the work I do every week and you think that I should continue to do it because I'm giving you the quality of political knowledge and insight that will help you not squander your life and kind of rescue meaning from it, then go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, or make one enormous donations. I like the monthlies because it allows me to budget more, and that'll help me, with a marketing budget or getting better equipment that works all the time. Because in a lot of ways, freedom means having equipment that works every time you turn it on. And I want to be a free Negro. So if you like what I do, go to funkyacademic.com and contribute. Thanks often comes in the form of cash, and the site takes credit cards.